Welcome to Overnight Finance's YouTube channel. I'm Eric from Selected Investments, and today we are talking about exchange traded strategies, or the ETS offered by Overnight Finance, and we're going to define exactly what this is and how you can potentially make money on this product. If you're wondering what is the yield of these ETSs, depending on the strategy, if we navigate to the Overnight Finance D app and we go to the Earn section, we are greeted with all of the current ETSs that are offered by Overnight Finance. More are to come as well, but we can see that the APYs differ from anywhere to 9.6% all the way to 22.4%. Of course, these are going to vary on a day-to-day basis, and we also have 4 different ETSs right now. 2 are available on Matic and 2 are available on Binance Smart Chain. So before we get into how the exchange strategy works, we can have a discussion about the ETS versus your traditional yield farming. Now, if we talk about impermanent losses, we can see that the ETS actually reduces the impact of impermanent losses. And when you are just traditionally yield farming, the impermanent loss is probably the most negative thing of yield farming, and traders have to take that into account before going into yield farming. Now, if we talk about the impermanent loss of the ETS strategy versus traditional yield farming, we can take this example of a day when the price of BNB plunged by 1.67%. A user who's providing liquidity on a BNB/USD liquidity pool position would have lost about 0.83%. However, the very same day, Overnight Finance's ETS was able to generate a 73.47% APY, even though the value of BNB dropped. Now, as we take a look at this calculation, we obviously have the price of BNB before the drop, then the price of BNB after the drop. This is market data, and as we can see, their value would now be $991, assuming they had put $1,000. And now we see that that results in a loss of 0.83%. Now, if we go take a look at the exchange traded strategy in question on the very same day, this is where we see an APY of 73.4%. So even though there was a drop in the price of BNB, the ETS was able to generate profits with this underlying strategy. And that is why we can say that the ETS has reduced the impermanent loss. It is still possible, but it is definitely reduced. Now, the performance in a bear market, we have had the ETS probably for a couple of months now, and we have a positive APY on a daily basis. Yes, it fluctuates, but it's never been negative. So we have a positive performance during a bear market, and obviously during traditional yield farming. If the market is going down, you are also going to have a negative performance in your yield farms. Now, obviously, both are going to be positive during a bull run. And then if we talk about hedging against market volatility, the ETS offers this, whereas the yield farming does not. The ETS is also auto compounded, so every time you actually get a reward, it is redeposited automatically or recompounded into the strategy, and it's making you even more money on that money, as well as it has instant deposits and instant withdrawals. Now, of course, your yield farming is going to be a few more steps in order to have everything set up, and here Overnight Finance's ETS makes it very easy to get in and out of this strategy. Now that we understand the difference between yield farming and the strategies, let's dive into the ETS, exactly how much money is invested per strategy, and dive into the nitty-gritty of how this strategy works. So as we go back to Overnight Finance's DApp, we have about $37,000 into this Matic/USDC ETS. We have 185 in this Binance Smart Chain one, another $200,000 into this ETS, as well as another $131,000 in this ETF on Polygon. So in total, we're probably somewhere around $500,000 invested in these strategies. And if we take a look at this one in particular, I am actually personally invested in this one. I have about $2,000 in it. And if we take a look at the APY, we do see it's around 16% on average for the last bit of time. And we can also see this at the top here. Now let's dive into the details on how this strategy works and exactly what happens when a user deposits into this strategy. So the first thing is, of course, you are going to need USD Plus for depositing in this strategy. And now, depending on which chain you are using, you are going to have USD Plus on that specific chain. Now, once that happens and a user deposits into the strategy, there is a portion of that USD Plus that is actually sent to another platform. And on the Binance Smart Chain of things, it's actually going to be sent to Venus. And here is where it's going to use a portion of that USD Plus to borrow BNB. So this is, of course, for the Binance Smart Chain. It would be similar for the Polygon side of things, but of course they would be borrowing wrapped Matic as opposed to BNB. Now, what happens with that is that there is a health factor of 1.2 that is always going to be maintained throughout this strategy, making it a lot safer because there is less risks of liquidation, because liquidation happens when your health factor drops below 1. So we're going to get into the health factor a bit later here, but once there is a portion of BNB that was borrowed, it is actually going to pair that BNB with the other half of the USD Plus that you deposited into the strategy. Now, as we know, this forms a liquidity pool token because we have half of USD Plus and we have half of wrapped BNB, and they're using that to invest it in a different pool. And the pool for this specific strategy is Cont's wrapped BNB and USD Plus pool. Now, obviously, depending on the strategy, the pool is going to vary as well. Now, since this liquidity pool token is being deposited into a liquidity pool, you can understand that this strategy is generating a yield from USD Plus, because as we've went through in previous videos, we have USD Plus rebasing inside of the liquidity pool, and we also have fees that are being generated through people using this liquidity pool. Now, with this specific strategy, because they have an NFT and therefore governance in Cont, what Overnight Finance can do is incentivize their own pool. And in this case, it would be wrapped BNB and USD Plus. They can incentivize it, meaning they can vote for this, and also incentivizing other people and users to use this liquidity pool in order to receive more rewards. So it is a bit of a loop because they're incentivizing their own liquidity, generating yields on that, as well as if people decide to participate in this liquidity pool, they can also generate more yields because Overnight Finance is using their governance for this specific pool. Now, as we can see, if the price of BNB increases, well, your debt amount on the borrowed platform is also going to increase. And on the flip side, if the market price of BNB goes down, well, your debt is also going to go down because that is also borrowed on the borrowing platform. So this is where Overnight Finance makes it super easy for you because they are the ones calculating their health factor and making sure it stays stays at 1.2, and you don't have to worry about the health factor reaching 1 and reaching the risk of liquidation. Now, they do have a daily rebase happening on a daily basis, and it's also checking the health factor every 24 hours and making sure it is rebalanced to stay at 1.2 to avoid the risk of liquidations. Now, the token held by people in this strategy is the wrapped BNB/USD Plus token. This is the one, and that is redeemable for USD Plus. So to mint this strategy, you need USD Plus. And once you want to get out of this strategy and withdraw, you are going to be withdrawing in USD Plus. And this is done within a few clicks of a button. So you don't need to go and borrow your funds from a lending platform. This is all done for you. You don't have to stress about the health factor because this is also calculated daily. And you don't have to go and break your liquidity pool if you want to get out of this position. Now, the same is also true for the Polygon exchange traded strategies. It is the same principle, but obviously it is with Wrapped-Matic. And in this case, they are borrowing from Aave V3 markets as opposed to Venus on Binance Smart Chain. But the process is the same. And if we take a look at how this is done in real time on their DApp, once you've chosen the strategy you want to invest in, you connect your wallet, and of course you hit Mint USD Plus / wrapped BNB, or whichever strategy you've decided. As we've said, you need USD Plus in order to invest into that ETS. In this case, if I were to put $5, I would be getting the same amount in that strategy. There is a small entry fee of 0.5%, so we can see that I'm going to be losing 2 cents, but this is a very small fee, and all of these fees are actually used in order to vote for their pool on Cont, in order to make sure that it can be incentivized in order for people to want to use this liquidity pool. For those of you who are interested in understanding more about the health factor and its importance, we have a graph here showing how it works and when people get liquidated out of their position on borrowed assets. Now, because the ETS is actually borrowing a portion of the funds in order to create that liquidity pool, there is a health factor associated to that position. Now, as we mentioned, overnight finance is making sure that health factor remains around 1.2 on a daily basis, and this is rebalanced every day if needed. So if we take a look at its importance and exactly how it is calculated and what happens when your health factor is below 1, we can see that your loan to value is a ratio between the amount of loan you have versus the collateral you've put up front. So as we can see here in this step number 1, you have a certain amount of a loan, which in this case for overnight finance, they are borrowing Wrapped-Matic or wrapped BNB, and they are putting up some USDC as collateral. So in blue, we have the collateral that's been put up front times the liquidation threshold, which is represented as LT. Now you have a value here, which is if that value is reached, liquidation is going to happen, meaning that they are going to have to take the assets that you've borrowed and sell them, meaning you could potentially lose some money. Now, as we can see, as the health factor becomes lower and lower and closer to 1, there is a risk of liquidation. And once it goes lower than 1, then the collateral times your liquidation threshold is going to be lower than the liquidation value. Now, what happens after that is, of course, there is liquidation, and the platform you've borrowed your funds from are going to sell your borrowed funds at a discounted price in order to repay the loan that you took on. So what happens there is that you are going to be losing some money and you are going to get liquidated out of that position. But because overnight finance makes sure that the health factor is always at 1.2, the risk of liquidation is practically null. Now, last but not least, to conclude what the ETS is, we've talked about borrowing, we've talked about hedging their strategies, we've talked about the chains that the ETS is available on. We have Polygon, we have Binance Smart Chain. More chains are going to be available in the future as well, so definitely stay up to date with overnight finance. We've talked about the risks of the ETS, such as impermanent loss. There are also some smart contract risks there as well, because we are talking about DeFi. That is, of course, present in any projects. A smart contract could get attacked. That is obviously a risk that we are all aware of. And we've also talked about the easiness it is to mint and withdraw from these said strategies. So with all of that being said, these exchange traded strategies from overnight finance allow users to generate a modest APY with a low risk of impermanent loss, all while being able to come in and out at ease within each of these strategies. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about USD Plus, about these different ETSs, definitely join the Discord. Leave a comment down below. We will make sure to answer your question. There is a lot of information on their DApp, so definitely come here, educate yourself, and ask questions. And if it is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.